Hello everyone and welcome to WhatCulture Comics. My name is Jules Gill and I'm joined today by my son Ewan, and we have a little bit of a surprise today. You're probably not used to seeing us on the live action screen, and there is a good reason, because two very large boxes were dumped at the desks of WhatCulture today, and we were like, what's inside these boxes?
What's in the box?
What is in these boxes? And when we opened it up, we found a lovely note from Jane, who has donated her entire X-Men comic collection to us.
It's so big. I try and lift it up on camera, but I think I'd embarrass myself.
My arms nearly snapped trying to carry it in.
My noodly self brought them in from the thing, and I was like,
So what we're going to do for you guys today is we're going to unbox this absolute bounty of comic goodness and give you a little rundown of what we think about each of these issues, any particular stories, any particular ones that we think are famous, and basically just see what we got in this present. But first, it would be rude to carry on without at least first reading this lovely note that we've been sent in by Jane. So here it goes. Dear Jules and Ewan, I'm what can only be described as a nostalgia hoarder, and it's a bad habit I've had all my life. I thought it was time to let stuff go, so I'm working under the philosophy that if someone else can get use or joy out of something, it's better than gathering dust in my attic. So I gift to you my entire collection of essential X-Men comics that I read and collected as a kid. The X-Men had a major influence on my childhood, especially Storm. I grew up wanting to be a weather-controlling black woman. Sadly, I am not. Anyway, I hope you get some use from them. Keep up the good work on the channel and have a fab day. Love, Jane. Thank you so much, Jane.
It's amazing.
Through. Honestly, when you told me about this, that you opened up the box and I just heard a squeak that was so high-pitched, it almost ruptured my eardrums.
I'll do a little recreation. It was like...
So what we're going to do now is dive in and open up this insane collection that we've got here. So if I just give you a massive stack.
So some context needed for our American viewers here. So this is interesting because I think Jane found these comics when I found these comics when I was growing up. So in the UK, actual dedicated comic book stores are more prevalent today than they were about 10 years ago, I want to say, or at least I didn't know where to find them when I was a kid. So if you wanted to pick up a comic, your best bet was to go to a local cooperative or WH Smith. And this is where Panini came in. Now, Panini had a deal with DC and Marvel to basically republish their comics that were releasing at the time. And they did them, and what they used to do is they used to compile several different stories into one thing. So what I used to read was Batman Legends, which collected the Batman series as it was releasing, along with different other comics as well. So I remember reading bits of War Games through that, bits of Hush, and then I also had some of the X-Men stuff, and I had the Spider-Man stuff as well, which when that was coming out in the UK, we were reading stuff like J. Michael Straczynski stuff, so the Venom Sandman arc, I remember the stuff with Ezekiel and Morlan and all that sort of stuff. So it was an amazing way for us to kind of get into comics that way.
So do these actually act as a sort of mini compendium of the stories that were going on at the time outside of it?
There were a few years late, I think, for a few of them, but this is really interesting. I'm going to go in here. This is the first, Jane started reading this at issue 100, which was in June 2003. The amazing thing about that is that I started reading comics like WH Smith and stuff. I used to always beg my parents or visit my relatives in Scotland. I was like, please let me get the thing. And this is really, really cool. So I'm going to go
look. It's a special 100-page bumper edition as well for issue number 100. So, I mean, a good place to start.
I'm trying to figure out who the writer was of this particular arc. Just double checking.
That's so crazy.
It's very, very interesting. And here we go. Actually, I found it here. So this is actually a story by Chris Claremont, which is really, really cool. He's a really famous X-Men writer. He did Dark Phoenix Saga. He did basically revitalized the X-Men in the 70s and 80s, and this is really interesting. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this was a one-off Claremont story that we got for this certain issue.
It would make a lot of sense if you're going to have like a super special edition of something to have an original storyline, because it gives added value to the comic book itself, doesn't it?
But it's interesting because I think going through all this, it's just such a wonderful reminder of not only, you know, how comics can change from like area to area, but how that different people access the medium.
See, I love the fact that they've got what you consider to be a very 90s style here, very, very super colourful, bright and vibrant, and then even in the same comic you've got the very like original
and that
styling,
was the best
very
thing,
muted
they used to bring across the older issues into the series as well. So not only would you get a modern story for actually reading, you'd get classic storylines as well. So you'd get a proper comprehensive education of what was going on, basically.
See, do they still do stuff like this now?
Yes, they still. I think Batman Legends and a few of these are still going, but obviously with the growth of like chains like Forbidden Planet and Traveling Man, it's much easier to access comics from Diamond, who distribute comics in America. So
well, I've noticed that in some of these chains, like you're saying, they actually do have exclusive lines that come out in there, don't they? I know they have exclusive covers and things like that all the time, but sometimes you'll find that they've got
W.H. Smith in the thing.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how their relationship between like outlets back in the day versus how it is now. I mean, would you find an essential X-Men lineup being useful to kids of today?
Yeah, absolutely. It was amazing for me because not only did you have the modern stuff, as I said before, you had all the other stuff that came earlier. And one of the most incredible things to me was, you know, being a young dorky kid reading all these comics growing up, was that they'd also reprint the letters pages at the end of each issue.
The letters bits are the best.
This was quite interesting because obviously at the end of it, they used to, when you used to write into Marvel, is that you'd end it with "Make mine Marvel," and that'd be the whole thing. There's an advert for Ultimate Spider-Man, the video game in that comic. That is amazing. But this is amazing, and I think the really cool thing what Jane's done here is that she loved the X-Men so much that this was the one thing they kind of hardlined all the way through, was just the X-Men.
Yeah.
I think that's incredible. You know, these series, we never really... In fact, I had that Avengers one. There's an advert here for all the stuff that
Avengers United.
So they used to do the different issues, and like, they had the Avengers stuff here.
Crap.
And
I don't know if you guys can see that. On the back of this one, there's an advert for Fantastic Four toys.
From the movie?
Yeah, from the movie, that has motion-activated light and sound gloves with launching missiles, ammo clip that holds up to 6 flaming missiles, and you could dress as Ben Grimm and have look at his ugly face.
That's
wonderful. You could wear that if you wanted to.
Yeah, but there's some classic stories in here from the likes of Scott Lobdell, Claremont. I'm fairly certain that this will actually intersect with the Mike Carey series, and God forbid, the Chuck Austin series as well, which was not very, very good.
Was it essential, a pun intended, that you collected these in order? Would it actually have a narrative thread that would be going through all
Yeah. So I think a lot of them would want to...
Would it actually have saying like continued in issue so-and-so?
Yeah.
Would it not be sequential? So if you read something in 132, would it be the story continuing in 132? Or would it
usually
like,
they'd collect all the arcs, so they'd have different things going on at the same. The issue for me was that I didn't go into the town regularly, so I'd just end up with loads of random issues with little bits and bobs. But I didn't care. I was reading comics, and that was like the really cool thing about that. Extreme X-Men.
Oh man, you've seen the team ups here between Wolverine and Deadpool.
Yeah.
Remember that?
So actually, that's a great point. Well, I'll put these back here for a second. But some of the things that we see on the back here were the different kind of comics that they used to publish. So they had the Mighty World of Marvel, which is like the ensemble kind of books they used to do.
Yep.
I didn't pick up Fantastic Four, but that is Mark Waid's one they've got on the back there. They had the Kurt Busiek Avengers there. And I remember they had the Wolverine one, which is a Wolverine team-up one, so they changed that around all the time. So they had Wolverine and Deadpool, Wolverine and Gambit was one they had for a little bit. And I'm fairly certain there was one that was Wolverine and Captain America. But again, that goes to show how popular Deadpool was even back in 2005 and 2006, which is really, really cool.
What I found absolutely amazing about the X-Men is that, like, single-handedly, they helped Marvel through a very, very difficult period of time.
Yeah.
They basically kept them on the out of bankruptcy, didn't they? Because they had to make a choice, didn't they, whether or not they were going to keep X-Men or they were going to go down a Wild West-themed comic book line, and they literally came down to a choice between which one of these is going to make us much more money, and they went with X-Men as a gamble, and that is mind-blowing today when you think about how, if things had been even slightly different, the entire landscape of comic books as we know it, even the film industry would have been completely changed, because lest we not forget, X-Men was one of the first superhero movies to come out, and gave it a lot of legitimacy. Except for the Toad scene where...
There you go. You get the full thing.
Oh my goodness, the toys that came out.
Little did you guys know that I modelled for Fantastic Four in the early 90s.
Yeah, it's a bit shame that you shrunk since then.
I know, yeah, I mean...
It's the fact that it's got thing feet. That's the thing that is the incredible one. But that's the first box.
Yeah.
There's a second box here as well.
Put that back
It goes all the way from issue 100 when Jane started collecting.
In 2003.
All the way through to, let's find out the last one that we've got in the box here, all the way through to 186.
Which was in 2010, and that's incredible. And the thing that I love about this is that all these different books, it's a catalogue of some of the X-Men's greatest hits. You have Peter David in here, you have Bendis in here, you have Claremont, like we just mentioned earlier on, and you've also got all the different eras represented. You've got the Bronze Age of comics, you've got the 90s, you've got everything in one big go.
I actually had this one. This is the thing, because I collected this sporadically whenever I would go into town. Like my gran, bless her, would just be like,
See,
you want to buy a comic?
Exactly,
and I was like, yeah,
I feel so everyone shared that everyone in the UK shared that experience if you were a nerd growing up, because these were amazing. You had that's the Joss Whedon stuff there actually, which is really, really cool. So this was, I'm looking at this now. So this was printed in 2009.
Yeah.
The Joss Whedon X-Men series, I believe, came out in 2004, 2006. There was a lot of there was a big thing, and I wonder if people at Panini probably had their own little debate going on there. Like, well, how soon do we jump in? Where do we start? Where do we come in? And this kind of shows how kind of far back it was. But again, it's such an amazing thing for us in the UK, because when you didn't have access to comic book shops, at least not to begin with, this was kind of the only way you'd be able to keep up with what was going on, because trades weren't massive at the time as well. We found a few in Waterstones and stuff like that. This was really where you'd find the stuff that you wanted.
Well, here's a really interesting thing for me personally, because it's all of these are marked as Civil War chapters. And now that was obviously a huge event that was going on with Marvel, and they were tying nearly every single piece of comic lineup that they had into this. And it's kind of like a trip down memory lane, because you're looking at this just thinking like, where was I at this point in time? Yes. What was I doing? What was I reading? What was I into? And the best thing about X-Men is that I feel that the reason that they've endured so well is because they actually have a message that's kind of, it's very important then, now, and possibly way into the future, and that is of acceptance
Tolerance.
of who you are, and tolerance, and not judging people based on their appearances or their abilities and stuff like that. And I feel like it's, when I speak to a lot of people about X-Men, they usually find it's the humanity that comes through in the stories that are there about, treating people fairly, about giving people a fair shake, that actually makes them so enduring and enjoyable to read. So basically, thank you very much, Jane, for sending this through. Ewan and I are going to pour through this, and Zoe as well. We're going to have a good old read, and maybe post some pictures of our favourite arcs and stuff like that, which will be quite fun.
Yes.
But maybe what we'll do, we've been talking a while about trying to get some stuff on the comic book channel that's a bit different from this. So let us know if you'd be interested in maybe us going through each of the ones that we've been sent, maybe doing like a short little book review style thing, or a roundup. Maybe we could read one each and then just come back and tell it.
A little book club, if you will.
Exactly, Comic Club are us. But let us know what you think about it down in the comment section below, and whether or not you collected the Essential X-Men. When did you start? When did you stop? Have you got the whole collection? Let us know. If you want to follow me, you can do so at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter, and you can follow my son Ewan at
Ewan Ruins Things.
Thank you, Jane, so much. Again, really, it does mean a lot. And we'll speak to you guys soon. Catch you later.
Bye.